is the news. Steelers released quarterback Mitch Trubisky. With that, there was a significant odds change, and that the new favorite to go to the Steelers is Justin Fields. Obviously, the Bears have a lot of decisions to make regarding their picks in this year's draft, and if they choose to stick with Justin Fields or move on in a new direction with some of the top quarterback talent in the draft this year.
AKA Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Yep. So that'll be interesting. I mean,
it's going to be a fun ride. It's not going to be quite the quarterback carousel that I think we've kind of become accustomed to in recent years. It feels like that whole chapter of the NFL offseason and free agency began with the Peyton Manning tour back in whenever that was. Then there was the Tom Brady tour. Obviously, Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have been massive conversations the last couple of off seasons. And this season, there's not going to be quite that level. But Justin Fields is going to be the topic of any and every conversation until the day that the draft happens, and possibly afterward, depending if he's traded beforehand or if he's not traded beforehand and they take Caleb Williams, but you've got other names like, Ryan Tannehill, possibly Russell Wilson, who it sounds like is on the move again after being benched. So, it's going to be a fun off season, obviously.
It should be.
Unless you're a Bills fan, maybe.
Yeah. Some coaching stuff, both regarding the Super Bowl. We'll start with Steve Spagnuolo, obviously, who is now the only coordinator with 4 Super Bowl wins. He was signed to an extension following the Chiefs win. Well-deserved with what he's done with this team and how well he's performed throughout the season. The Chiefs' defense is one of the key reasons they even made it this far into a playoff run, let alone winning the Super Bowl. So Spags will be with the Chiefs for the foreseeable future. And obviously it's sparking some conversations about should Spags have another opportunity at a head coaching gig. We'll see how that plays out in the next year, 2 years, whatever. But for now, Spags will remain with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I don't want to just gloss over that. You kind of threw that in there. He is the only offensive or defensive coordinator in NFL history to win 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
all the people
really...
that are how long they're tenured and he's the only one. It's crazy.
What was his 4th? Was it the Giants?
Yes. He was involved in the Giants over the Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Was he also your head coach? He was, right?
No.
What? What am I thinking of?
He was head coach of the Rams.
Oh God. He's a very
till like 2011, I think he was with the Rams.
Okay, and he did start with the Eagles. That's he was defensive. Oh yeah, he rode that Super Bowl win into the head coach for the Rams. Yeah, okay, 2009 to 2011. All right, I knew I mixed that up a little bit, but it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and obviously I'm not the first person to say this. I'm definitely not the last. But something that I've said quite a few times in the past couple of episodes, and I'm going to say it again, is I think the biggest advantage that an organization or a team can have, especially when you've got a guy like Andy Reid as your head coach, or Sean McVay or whoever it is having an older, experienced defensive coordinator that is not going to be leaving to become a head coach. And that's why, it's just incredible to see what a coordinator, there were people calling for Spags' firing with the Chiefs. I mean, he started there in 2019. It didn't take long for them to want him gone. But he's turned it around and he has been absolutely fantastic. And I think it's safe to say that without him, they probably don't have the season they have this year because he kept them alive in a lot of games. That defense was outstanding. And it's also really, really young. A lot of key positions, especially cornerback. Trent McDuffie was awesome and
amazing.
I'm sorry, young defenses as a whole are very rare to find be good at all, let alone the level of which they were this season, and especially in the Super Bowl for the most part. So, good for Spags.
Well deserved by Spags. in much heavier news, on the Niners side of the ball, Steve Wilks is now out as Niners defensive coordinator after his one season with them. This was announced very shortly after Kyle Shanahan in a press conference as he expected all of his coaches to return. But Steve Wilks will not be returning.
Look, I mean, we're going to get to the game, but you held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. I know I just said that they haven't been as good this season, but you still held them to 19 points in regulation. And meanwhile, the offense that consists of George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and apparently a top front runner for MVP and Brock Purdy scored how many points in regulation? Oh, yeah, 19. So obviously Kyle Shanahan can't fire himself. And you're not going to fire him because what he brings to the table is extremely, extremely valuable. But this was not a move that I really saw coming, and it's definitely not the takeaway that I had after this game. So, I mean, whatever floats your boat, Kyle, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, and it doesn't feel like one you like really need a scapegoat for, right? Like, it didn't feel like there had to be a sacrificial lamb here to me.
No, I agree.
And it feels like that's what they did to him meaninglessly. Like, I didn't come out of this for the Niners saying like, oh, like somebody has to be fired. And it kind of feels like that's how they responded internally, which is interesting.
I'm not sure there's ever been a bigger scapegoat or guy who's gotten shafted as much as it feels like Steve Wilks has. He was the head coach in the for the Cardinals in 2018 for one whole season. And if I'm remembering correctly, that is the year they drafted Josh Rosen and then had the number 1 overall pick, fired him, hired Cliff Kingsbury, drafted Kyler Murray. Went on to be the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator for one whole season. He was in the college ranks for a year, and then he was the interim head coach for the Panthers after about a half season of being their defensive pass game coordinator, I think. Just I don't know, man. I don't know what you're looking for. Like, it's his first season back with a very undermanned, not exceptionally talented, at least on the back end defense for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, yeah, you have Nick Bosa, who, by the way, probably underperformed given the contract you gave him this season, but you didn't hear that from me. And you've got some great linebackers, a solid safety who was injured. Like, I just don't know what you expect from him. What does he have to do to keep his job? Win the Super Bowl? Because like, if that's the difference, like,
then what are you doing here? Like,
it shouldn't. I just don't get it. Matt Patricia let up 41 points to Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles, then got a head coaching gig.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
But we're firing. Okay, it's stupid. It's stupid.
It is stupid.
It's bad management, but it is what it is. If there's one thing Kyle Shanahan is not good at, it's management. So.
Yes. Another big move, though, for the Niners. The Commanders are now hiring 49ers assistant head coach Anthony Lynn as their run game coordinator. The Commanders had made a run at him last year, but they didn't end up, poaching him. They got him this year, and Lynn has a relationship with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, so it makes sense for him to make the move. But that is another spot that the Niners now have to fill following the defeat in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's, not a crazy role, but Anthony Lynn has been, he's had good years in the NFL. He was a head coach, obviously, with the Chargers, offensive coordinator for the Lions. Another guy who I think maybe has gotten the wrong end of the shaft a couple of times, but obviously, he hasn't been particularly exceptional either, but for some reason, the first thing I'll always think of him as is the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, and he was only the interim. But for whatever reason, I'm like, Anthony Lynn, the Bills.
Yeah, the Bills.
What? No, the Chargers. Although he did parlay that into a head coaching gig, and that brings back the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, where we were talking about interim head coaches becoming head coaches. So I don't know. That just There
full
we
circle.
Go. Yep, full circle.
There you go. We finally finished the conversation.
No, we haven't, because I'll bring this up now every time I think about it, and it occurs to me, and someone matches that description. So
okay,
it's gonna be great.